his class on both occasions in 2015 and 2017. That was when he got BSc and when he got Bachelor of Dental Surgery. During clinical training, he led the Committee on Dental Education and Health, also known as CODE, for the University of Lagos Association of Dental Students (ULADS). He then completed his Masters and PhD in Epidemiology, Genetics Epidemiology to be precise, at the University of Iowa, graduating in 2021 and 2023 respectively. Additionally, he earned certificates in biostatistics and college teaching from the University of Iowa and in genetics and genomics from Stanford University, all in 2023. And as a researcher, Dr. Alade has authored or contributed to 25 publications in peer-reviewed journals and presented at numerous local and international scientific conferences. He also serves as a peer reviewer for top journals in his field. 2022, Dr. Alade received the inaugural Smile Train IADR Cleft Research Award at the 2022 International Association for Dental Research Conference. Currently, Dr. Alade is a Dental Clinical Research Fellow at the National Institute of Dental and Craniofacial Research (NIDCR), focusing on genetics and genomics of dentofacial deformities to improve diagnosis and management. His long-term goal is to become a clinician scientist dedicated to advancing public health through innovative research and evidence-based patient care. And without wasting much of our time, I would like to hand over the mic to Dr. Alade Azeez to give us a presentation on the topic tonight. Thank you very much, Dr. Aziz.
All right, yeah, thank you so much, Finisher, for that introduction. Is it possible to share screen using this?
Yes, sir. Yeah, you can share screen.
Okay, but I haven't. Yeah, sure. Let me see. So, share.
You should be able to share screen now, sir.
Oh, okay, okay. Do I need? Okay, let me try it then. Okay. Do you mind telling me how to go about that in this on this platform? Because I'm trying to do it on my system and I can't see that option.
Either you see share screen icon just below on the icons below, or you see three dotted three dots by the side, vertical dots. Just click it and you see share screen.
Yeah, I mean the stuff that looks like share screen here is what's it called? It's showing me okay, choose what to share with Google with meet.google.com and then so, document. Then I'm trying to click on
I
entire screen.
okay.
Go ahead.
Send me your slides so that we can help you share it from
Okay.
there.
That's fine. I can send it to you now.
All right.
Okay, I'll email it to you. Okay, so I'm sending that now currently.
So while we wait for the slide to be projected, as we all know, at the end of the presentation, just leave your message in the chat box so that they can be read out for the to aid coordination. So just any question you have, leave them in the chat box. They will be read out, and the speaker will answer them.
Okay. Um, so please let me know when you get it. So I think what I wanted to say is that, well, I'm happy to be here today. And the way I thought about doing this presentation is just to make it more interactive as much as possible. So what I've done is just to put together some slides, largely pictures, basically, just to show you my own journey into research, and possibly we will discuss along those slides what are the potential options that you can also explore. But again, I want it to be interactive, so I would encourage you to ask questions at different points. If you have anything you wanted to clarify, please don't hesitate to ask, because that way you can maximize this opportunity. Because sometimes I think you might have, some things that you're thinking about. If I don't know what exactly you want to do, it's going to be difficult for me to address your own concern. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you. So I have slides, but the slides, like I said, they are just pictorial representation of some of the things that I have done to get to where I am. But again, it's going to be different for each and every one of us. But of course, the principles will remain the same. So I would encourage you to ask questions, clarify, just so that you also have a clear idea of what you are going to be doing going forward. All right. So once you have it, please just kindly help me upload it so I can use it as a guide for the presentation. So, so you can just start from the first one, and I will tell you to move when to move. Thank you. Okay, so just like Funsho has introduced, just like Funsho introduced me earlier, my name is Aziz, and like I said, I wanted to share my own journey as well as advice that I would give to those that are aspiring to also apply the same route as me. So you can move to the next slide, please. All right, I have no disclosure, but again, I would say that all the opinions that I'm going to be talking about here is solely my own and not the view of the institution I'm affiliated with. So you can move on. Okay, so just a little bit about my educational journey. I started, I think 2009, 2010 was when we started at Akoka. And 2014, I got the intercalated BS in human physiology. And then 2017 was when I got my BDA. My BDS. I think this slide shifted somehow, but that's fine. the point here is my research idea or my interest in research actually started during the intercalated degree in physiology. And this was because during my intercalated degree in physiology, I had to do research. That was part of the requirement for me to get a BS. And so I'm sure you guys are familiar with, you guys are familiar with doing research, I think now at 500 level, maybe. But at that time, we don't do research until final year in dental school. We probably do some comments, but not, deep research like that. But for me, I got interested in molecular biology because during my physiology period, I was actually working alongside a PhD student who was also doing something with regards to PCR and some other molecular biology technique. And that was my first exposure. So I completed my intercalated. I did something in mice at that time. I was looking at, I think, anti-malaria, the effect of anti-malaria drugs in terms of their safety on the cardiovascular and the renal system. So I finished my intercalated physiology, went back to dental school. Went back to, I think, junior posting, then, all the way to dental school. And then I finished dental school in 2017, yeah, early 2017. I did my internship in ULADS in 2018, and then I went for my NYSC in 2019. So I did that in Abuja. So and so towards the end of my NYSC was when, well, not towards the end, I think during my NYSC, I already started thinking about, what's going to be my next plan. But then again, because when you're trying to apply, so let me take that again. If you're trying to apply to go into grad school for master's or PhD, most times if you're applying this year, then the start date is probably the year after. So what that means is that if you're planning to go next year, then you really have to apply this year. And that's the plan. And so for me, it was doing house job that I had to take some of the exams. Like during those periods, GRE was still compulsory, TOEFL and some other things like that. But I think now it's not as compulsory as it was then anymore. A lot of schools now waived GRE requirements. Apart from that, the TOEFL also, you can waive it now by saying that you finished from a school where the language of instruction is English, and that should suffice for your English language requirement. So, well, by and large, I did the GRE exam at that time, and then I applied, and so luckily I got admitted, and I got admitted in 2019, and then I needed to move towards the end of my service. Again, I'm presenting it as if it was that straightforward, but it wasn't. There's a lot of other things around that. Maybe we'll talk about if we get to the question and answer section. So I started my program. So at that time, I was interested in doing PhD, but then I was offered masters, and so that's another thing that I'm going to talk about as we go forward. And then I reached out to a mentor that I had at that time to say, well, I wanted to do PhD, but then they offered me a master. And they said, well, take the masters, but then if you prove yourself in your first year of masters, you should be able to, say that you want to continue into PhD, and that should be allowed. And that was that was the option I took. And then, yeah, and that's how I did the masters for 2 years, technically. So I got the master's in 2021, but because I already indicated interest in PhD in 2020, so it was more like, well, just finish the master's and then you just continue into PhD. And that was what I did. And that helped because I was able to complete the PhD 2 years after. So I finished my PhD in 2023. And yeah, and after my PhD in 2023, I decided to do, because now I'm interested in combining clinical and research. And so I decided to take up this fellowship. So the advantage of this fellowship is I get to still see patients, and I also get to use samples from those patients for my research. You can move to the next one. You can move on to the next one. Again, like I said, if anyone is interested in any of these aspects that I'm talking about, you can stop me. But maybe you can go through the slides and then we can discuss afterwards. So next slide, please. Okay, so just so that I can start, while I was doing my house job, I knew that I wanted to do research. I knew that I wasn't going to remain in just doing the clinical work alone. I feel like doing routine for me wasn't something that I was so, that I enjoyed that much. I needed something else to sort of explore. And so what I did was to to start reaching out to people that have, that are thinking of doing it or that are, along that route already. And so I reached out to a couple of potential advisors. And apart from that, I also reached out to people that are ahead of me. Some of our old students that I knew were also into maybe doing masters or something like that. And so that's why my point here is don't be afraid to reach out. I mean, send that email. What's the worst that would happen? The person will say no. But you only need 1 year, and that's what I tell people. So send that email to that person, reach out to the program director, ask whatever questions you have. Like, do I need to do this exam? Can I apply to this now? Do I qualify? Don't just assume in your head because you think that those that are going there must have a certain CGPA. Because those are some of the misconceptions that we have, that you must have a certain CGPA for you to qualify for scholarship. In most cases, that's not the case. The case most often is they have to look at your application in totality. So they have to look at your experience. Have you had any, research exposure before? Any presentation, any of those things would count. And maybe we would also get to that point. The way we sort of, write our own CV is a bit timid compared to how it's done in Western world. And I think that's also because of our culture. Although I think that is changing now with the like of LinkedIn and all that. People are now becoming more creative in writing whatever they have done into their CV, which I think is very good. So, but the point is, don't just sometimes when you send email to these people, they might not respond to you. They are busy. Some of them are even, some of them are very busy. Some don't even get to check their email because can you imagine the number of emails that they receive every day? Back then I don't used to understand, or I find it difficult to understand, but now I can tell you for sure that I also find it difficult to keep up with all the email that I get. And that's so compared to some of the other people that you email. And that's the thing. That's why sometimes when you email people and they don't respond to you, email them again, send a follow-up. And even if they don't respond to you, find an opportunity to link with them, someone that knows them or something. And that's what I'm going to tell you about. So for Dr. Butali, I did try to reach out to him at that time, but I wasn't successful at reaching out. So what I did was I spoke with a senior of mine that was also on his way. So I can't remember one of the presentations that I listened to. So I was told he was on his way. I mean, he was going to be joining his lab. So I reached out to him to say, well, I was actually trying to contact him too to see if there's an opportunity for me to do what I'm interested in, which is molecular biology or genetics stuff. And so he also said, well, he's going to help me talk to him. But luckily for me, he came down, I think he came to Nigeria to give a talk. And one of my own senior residents, I was an out officer at that time. So one of the senior residents was the one that did the introduction. Just said, well, it was just an informal introduction to say, well, I think this boy is interested in molecular genetics, and that's what you do. Maybe you should. And you guys have the same name. That was another thing. So you guys have the same. Maybe you guys should talk to each other. Okay. And then I met him. I said the same thing, but it was just a brief, 5 minutes introduction. That was it. But I kept, so that was the entrance. And so after that, I kept reaching out to say, this is what I'm interested. This is what I'm doing currently. I'm planning to write my exam. Once I'm done, I'll let you know. So, and that's the thing. So when you're talking about mentee-mentor relationship, you have to be the one to update your mentors, and that's still true even for me right now. And I'm going to tell you, I still have a lot of mentors, and I still tell them, well, this is my plan, and I'm hoping to complete this by now. And so, you just tell them about your plan because that way they know what stage you are, and if there's any opportunity or any opening, they will let you know. And I'll tell you why that is important. I ended up not. So at that time, I reached out to him and he told me that the lab funding that he has at that point is for one person, which he already had someone that was, on his way to his lab. That maybe I can consider applying to, that he's going to mentor me if I'm interested in applying, and maybe he would also write a recommendation letter for me, which was fine. So, and that was encouraging. So I said, that's good. So I started applying. I applied to about different, I can't remember, but maybe like 4 or 5 schools at the time. Some of them, so I got interview, and then the one I got interview in was in Iowa, and it was actually in molecular medicine. Yeah, it was not in what I eventually did. So it was in molecular medicine. So I got interviewed. But of course, that did not work. But throughout these processes, I kept updating him to say, well, this is what I'm doing now. I got interview with this program and I'm preparing for that interview like that. That did not work. But luckily for me, he said, well, maybe you're interested in genetic epidemiology if molecular medicine did not for you. And that there is a program um, in College of Public Health that is genetic epidemiology. And I think I knew the person that is going to be your mentor if you end up going to that program. And then he said, let me just shoot the person an email. And he sent an email to her asking that, well, I have a student that's interested in this. Do you mind mentoring him? And she said yes. And that was it. So I emailed her back. So I was copied on that email. So I emailed her back to say, well, and then she said I should apply to the program. And so it was when I applied to the program that I was told that, you have not done a lot of requirements in terms of the biostats and epidemiology that is required for a PhD in epidemiology in quotes. And so you would have to start from a master's. So that is how that actually started. So my point here is, remember that I got a couple of no along the way. I think I got some other years also, but maybe years without scholarship. And that's, I'm sure a lot of people might have faced some of those challenges too. So you only need 1 years. And again, don't just knock. So if I ask and then they said that, well, there is no opening or something, keep asking. Sometimes you just need to also push a little. Like you just need to, try. Don't just take no for an answer without trying. And that's something I think we need to learn. And so the other thing is you have to be the one to drive the mentor-mentee relationship as a mentee. And that's very important. Your mentors are unlikely going to be the one to drive that relationship. So you have to drive it. And so one of the ways you drive it is by, updating your mentors to say, I just finished my final year dental exam. I'm planning to take my maybe GRE, for instance, and I should be applying to schools by this fall. You just do that. And maybe when the application time is up, you email again and said, well, I'm looking at some of this program and I found some of these people interesting. The reason why you're doing that is you don't know if that person actually knows some of this individual on a personal level, and they might just do an introduction for you and that's it. And so that's what I would encourage you to do. Drive that mentor-mentee relationship. Don't wait for your mentor to sort of, tell you what to do, because they most likely will not do that. And that's the point on this slide. You can move to the next one. Okay. So the other thing is, even when you get into any of this program, a master's program, or even if you are still doing your internship or serving, remember that you have to continue to learn. And I will tell you why that is important, because even while I was doing my master's and PhD in genetic epi, I knew that the University of Iowa, they don't, so some of the human genetics statistical courses that I'm interested in were not offered. But I knew that for me to be able to compete nationally, I need to learn some of these things. And so what I did was to start looking for courses that would give me some of those skills. And so I started with the Summer Institute for Biostats. This was a course that was done, that was in 2020. It was during the time of COVID, so it was online, which was fine. I attended that course to learn how to do analysis of, genetic data. These were some of the courses that Iowa would not even allow me to take that course until I'm in my third year, for instance. And so because they said, well, there are some requirements, but this program would allow me to take the course. Why not? I took that course. And why this is important is because this allowed me to shorten my own program time. So if I had waited till the third year to take the course, what it meant is I'm going to have to also wait to be able to now do my research to get the requirement for my thesis to be able to graduate. But because I've taken some of those courses online, I was able to do the data analysis. I was able to start presenting results, and they saw that, well, it seems he's ready to graduate. And that's why. Because technically, after my master's, then people would think that you are supposed to now start PhD and you should be spending 4 years minimum. But of course, by the time I'm finishing my master's, I started showing them that I have results from what I was working on. And that was why I was able to push and then get out, as fast as I did. And so the point here is continue to learn, seek those opportunities out. And so I started by learning the molecular stuff in terms of, genotyping. But second year, I realized that, genome sequencing became relatively cheap. So as at the time I joined the lab in 2019, it was still a little bit expensive. But during that COVID, things started changing. So many companies came into the market and they started doing genome sequencing at a very cheap rate. And so what happens is the lab also was moving away from doing genotyping of one SNP. And so, yeah, from doing genotyping of one, locus in the DNA to doing the whole genome because it was cheaper to do. And so I started by learning the old. So the picture here is just showing you while I was still doing the old genotyping and co. But then, like I said, the field moved. So I knew for me to be ready for that new change, I also have to learn how to now undo some of those data. Since the company are going to sequence it and send us the results, I have to learn how to do some of those analysis. And so I seek some of those training opportunity. And I'm also grateful because the lab supported me throughout this process. So sometimes they fund me and sometimes I got funding from external body. And so that's just to point out that. And so I did a couple of courses on how to analyze genetic data, and that gave me that edge. So I started analyzing at an early period in my own PhD, and so that was why I was able to tell them I'm ready because I have results to present. And so they saw that and they allowed me to graduate, because the point is you just need to show certain level and then your committee have to be satisfied with what you are producing. Once they are satisfied, they will let you go. Okay, so you can move on to the next slide. Next slide. Okay. Yeah. And so the thing again that I wanted to show on this slide is be consistent. And when I say be consistent, the point here is you have to remember that, when I started my own PhD, and I think the first presentation that I went to was online because the dental research, American Association for Dental Research conference that year was online because of COVID in 2020. So I joined late 2019. That was COVID became serious around 2020. And so that was when the conference was held and it was online. Now, what struck me was that even though I presented, that was my first, presentation as a graduate student. Even though I presented online, apparently some other people noticed my work. So they noticed the name at that time, which I was not aware of until, 2 years down the line. And then I went to an in-person meeting and I saw some people and they said, yeah, we remember your presentation from last year. And so at that point, I felt that, nobody really, care about, this first year PhD student or first year master student presenting something where there are a lot of other top guys presenting. But the point was, people notice you. You just need to put your best foot forward. So make sure you giving the presentation your best. You're doing your best at every opportunity you get, because the point is you don't know which of those presentations you're going to have someone who is going to be your next boss or who is going to be the next person that would help you get to where you're going. And so that's why that was my point here. Because in one of these presentations was where I actually presented in a room where we have the director for the National Institute. That's the National Institute of Health, and that's the largest research organization in the United States here. And so the director and the deputy director were in that room where I was presenting. And that was, in fact, I remember that after that presentation, she walked up to me and said, well, what's your plan after your grad school? I'm like, well, I'm actually thinking of combining my clinicals. I don't know if I want to do residency or but that's the option. But that was it. So that was the first interaction we had, and the subsequent meeting. It was even actually subsequent meeting that I realized that she was the director. And so that was where we started the whole connection, and then it led to me coming over to the institute currently. So the point here is you will meet a couple of people along the line. Just make sure that okay. All right, thanks. Yeah. So just make sure that you are putting your best foot forward at every opportunity that you get. All right, you can move to the next one. Okay, so build a strong mentorship network. And again, I know that that's not a thing back home, but that's something that is changing now. You have to have mentors and you have to meet with them. You have to find a way to, communicate with them. And that's something that I learned from my own mentor. So here I do have a couple of people. So I don't know, I'm going to describe them to you, but in the middle where you have me, those were my two PhD mentors. So my Dr. Azeez Alade, I'm sure you guys are familiar with, and then Dr. Paul Wumidi. Those were the two PhD mentor that I had. And on the other side of it were a lot of the other mentors that I've met. So my master, the person that actually did that was my mentor during my master's thesis, and that's the top I think top left here. So that's the person that was my master thesis mentor. And all these individuals have shaped my research career in different ways. And I don't think I would have time to explain all of that for you guys today. But the point here is build a strong mentorship network because they all have their role. And I can give you a good example, for instance. So, I mean, one of these on this slide, you have someone that is just a biostatistician. So she is a biostatistician, Mary Marazita, somewhere on the left side here. And she has helped with, how do I think about doing statistics? So when I'm looking at a genetic data, I'm trying to do a statistical analysis. How do I think about that? I think um, that's one way to think about some of these things. So she helped me in that line. I have an orthodontics person here. I have an oral maxillofacial surgeon on this team. I have a public health specialist here. I have someone that is an MD and a genomic specialist, especially with African population. And I did have a virology who also doubles as diversity and inclusion director at NIH. So you really have to identify those that you think are going to be important in your growth, especially in your career. Sometimes it's based on your research, and other times it might be based on your so sometimes it's based on your research, what you're doing. Another time it's based on your career projection, like what are you thinking of doing? So I'm hoping to be, an oral surgeon, for instance, and have to identify an oral surgeon that's also doing some bit of research that would help me in this transition. So those are some of the things you have to think about, and that's why I think building a strong mentorship network is important. Okay, thank you. Next slide. All right. So the other thing I would tell you is, in as much as we do all this, enjoy the process. So my PI or my mentor used to say, work hard but play harder. And I think that's very important. And that's because when you looked at, I mean, for me, during undergrad, I used to also do some other things. I was involved in, code day, like Funshaw read out earlier. I also used to have a tutorial that I, interact with people via that also. And one thing that I've also learned is you also have to do some other things because research can get really, really stressful, especially when you're trying to submit a paper and none of your publication was not accepted, or maybe there is a review was rejected or something, which are normal thing that happen. But of course, as human, you feel bad. And so you have to have something else that you do that keeps you going. And that's where all the other stuff that I'm showing you comes in. I joined a soccer team back in my PhD days. I was part of the ambassador group, so we used to organize outreach even within Iowa, as at the time. And this was them doing like a send-off party for me during the end of my PhD. And so you would do a lot of all these activities because they are important in keeping you, just kind of refreshing you, and then you can go back and continue whatever research you are doing. And so that's what I would also say here. And so what I've also done is each time I go to some of those conferences, I take time out to go visit some of the locations that I've, attended conference at. And that's important for me because that's the only way I also get to, enjoy in a way, because you don't really get the time when you're doing research. You're always in the lab. You're probably trying to write on your laptop, but then you have to find a way to balance it. And that's something that is very important. Go to the next slide, please. Okay, so then the last thing is, if you do all those things that I've told you, the thing is, it feels like a delayed gratification in a way, because at first, when I started the PhD, I still have to get something out. It was not like I was getting anything, but people could have started working and then started making, money. But sometimes, after some time, some of these things would come together for you. And so what happened to me is, after I think my second or third year, that was when, things started happening. And so, and that's why I said when it rains, it pours. So it's more like, I got a couple of awards for my presentation. My picture was in the public health building. My picture was also hung in downtown Iowa as at the time. And so those are some of the things that happened during my time. So the thing is, you just have to remember that it would happen. Just be consistent, keep doing what you are doing. People noticed you. And so it was just very fast. A lot of things happened very fast. I got the IAD, I was my trainer award. I got and some of this actually comes with some cash prize, which was interesting. Apart from even the cash prize, the recognition was enormous. And that's the joy of when you do research. I'll move on to the next one, please. Okay. Now, the other thing is that I would tell people is try to pay it forward. So what I've done also is to try to also mentor other colleagues or students that are interested in doing research. So I just add some of these, and these are some of the things that gives you joy when you mentor people and they appreciate it. So I think the first one here on the left side, it's she's actually a medical geneticist in South Africa, and she was interested in doing statistical genetics. Of course, she knows nothing about statistics, and so I really had to take my time to explain how the statistics work and be patient enough, and we became so close. She actually finished that. She did the PhD, but then she was trying to learn statistical genetics for her own thesis. So I had to help her out with that, and that was that. When she finished, the acknowledgement and the recognition was everything. Until now, we are still potential. So we collaborated on papers where she would be the first author, I'll be the second author, because I helped to work on some of those papers. And the person in the middle is actually, he was an high schooler. That is, he was in high school, so what we call secondary school. And he came to the lab at the end, so more like an SS3 student, kind of. And then I had to take him through the rudiment of research and all that. He's actually an undergrad. I think it's in year 2 or year 3 now. So, but these are some of the things you would have to do. And I always encourage people to also pay it forward. Try to be a mentor to others, because that's the only way you can also develop your own mentoring skills. And when you mentor others, it also makes you appreciate, some of the process you've gone through, and makes you a better person in a way. Because I think I learned to be more patient. I learned to understand that, you can't just assume that people should know a lot of this. For me, though, I used to teach back in Medilac, so it wasn't totally different. It was just that I needed to now, build my interpersonal relationship, especially with people from different regions. So Tiwana here, for instance, the left one was from South Africa. The middle one, is from US, but I think origin from India. And the third person actually is a British lady that came also from Oxford. That came from the UK for research, for summer research. And so these are some of the things that you would also have to do to sort of make yourself a better person. So I usually would encourage that if you're in final year, you're in 500 level, try to mentor some of those that are in year 1, year 2, year 3, and then encourage them, because by doing that, you also tend to now appreciate some of the processes that you had to go through for you to get to where you are at the moment. You don't have to become you don't have to be a professor before you can mentor anyone. Just try and pay it forward. It's a good habit to have. All right, I'm guessing that's it. Okay, yeah, I think that's a good point to hang it. So yeah, I feel that I'm going to be able to talk more if we have questions and or clarification on any of that. And I think that should be the major point of this interaction. All right, thank you so much, guys. Okay. All right, thanks. But like I said, I want people to comment, tell what has been the challenges that you guys are facing. Of course, I would think that I know, but I'm guessing things has also changed since I left.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aziz. Really like your concise and precise presentation, which was actually insightful. I'm really grateful. And yes, please, if you have any question, please drop them in the chat box. I have some questions here from the
Yeah.
Google Form link we sent out, so I'll be reading them out. So before I get them, please, if you have any question on the presentation, how to go about, maybe you're a final year student or you're an house officer as well. If you have any question on how to become a dental scientist, how to ways in which you can jackpot, maybe you have a CV already, and you need help with that, please you can always drop your question in the chat box and we'll read them out. And if you're an undergraduate as well, I think one question, Dr. Aziz, one question undergraduate students, especially students in year within the year 2 to about year 4, 5, we ask you
Okay.
today, this evening will be, as an undergraduate, how can I position myself to how can I position myself if I want to become a dental scientist or a dental researcher in the future? Maybe I want to do a master's degree outside Nigeria in this field. How can I position myself right as an undergraduate?
Okay, yeah, I think that's a very good point. So, I mean, if I look back at my own time, like I said, I think mine was a different route because I had to do research to be able to get the intercalated physiology program, for instance. But I don't think that's going to be applied to everyone. So what I would say though is, you could actually participate in research like helping with questioning. I think people do that. And I know that during my time there were some people that were, involved in one or two I mean they volunteered for research opportunity during that time. Although the only thing that I think was challenging, I don't know if that's still the same, maybe you guys can tell me, is there is a problem with, which I think is a culture back home, where I can volunteer with someone for research, but then when it gets to the point of public, I mean, when you get to the point of publication, then you don't get to be recognized. Your name is not included. I think that's a bad, that's something that we need to change in our own environment. I'm not sure if that has changed. Maybe it has.
Maybe it has. Oh, it hasn't changed. It's still the same, sir.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah,
was
I
one of
think
the
that.
Yeah, so that was one of the problems that I had back then, was that you volunteer for research, but get to the point of publication, they don't recognize you. So it was just like, why am I doing this? But I would say that I mean, don't give up. Maybe the experience matters, so you can still volunteer, get the experience from that. But now again, okay, maybe something I should say is now you don't really have to volunteer within your institution anymore. I think there are some working groups. There are things you can volunteer outside your institution that guarantees you that at least there's going to be some acknowledgement for what you have done. Maybe you should consider those options, because I think then we were not open to. Because now I saw it. I mean, I've been privy to see a lot of working groups of people in maybe O&G, for instance, people interested in this kind of maybe oral surgery research. I don't know. So, but if there are things like that, maybe you should explore those other options beyond the forward of loots, for instance. And that's what I would say, because you need to be able to show something that maybe have, even if it doesn't end in publication for you, just being able to write that I did, and then be able to say that we're interested in doing this particular study and this is what we found from this study. I was involved in analyzing the data, or I was involved in collecting data, or I was involved in focus group discussion. I think that's something you should think about doing now. Reach out to people outside your institution, because that was the problem I had with people in my institution too. You just do all these things, but they don't recognize it. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aziz, for answering that. So I have I think I will take a question, then you answer, because I have series of questions here. What
Okay.
inspired you to pursue a career in dental science, and what drives your passion for this field?
Okay. So like I said, what inspired me was, I think it was just the curiosity. So again, when I started doing the physiology, right, I was supposed to be doing looking at the effect of one anti-malaria drug on the mouse liver and co. What I was doing that, so I was reading a lot of articles, literature review basically. And doing that, I realized that people are already doing metabolites, and some people are doing PCR to identify. So I was kind of interested in what exactly, how I was able to reproduce the genome, replicate many, I mean, all of these genomic. So I was sort of curious about that. But at that time, there was no resources for me to explore it. The closest that I had was there was this center that's near or 36. I'm trying to remember the name, but I think they do a lot of genome, they do a lot of PCR and co. And that was where I could learn something like that. So I usually would go sometimes, but even when you go there, there's a lot of restriction. You can't come in, and so and that was where I started the whole idea that I wanted to do something molecular. I wanted to do something in molecular genetics or something like that. That was the whole idea I had. But then towards the end, so when I was doing my house job, that was when it became clearer, because at that time we were, we were supposed to go to in oral surgery, we were going to the theater to assist with patients with cleft and all that. And then one of the old, which who happens to be my mentor now, who was an old student, was involved, was interested in knowing the genetic causes of cleft, especially in the African population. And so what that meant was we usually would collect saliva sample and send it down. And so I became curious. We should be able to start doing some of those things ourselves. We'll be able to look at the DNA of those samples, but that was not available here. So that was why I said I wanted to go into genetics. I was thinking of molecular medicine or something that has genetics, but I ended up in genetic epidemiology. But that was the whole idea. So it wasn't straightforward, to be sincere with you. But I knew I wanted to do something in that line. But exactly what, I was not sure until towards the end of my dental degree.
Thank you very much, sir. Another question. What advice will you give to someone just starting their career in dental science, and what skills or knowledge do you think are essential for success in this field?
So if you're talking about someone that just starting the career, so I'm guessing you're talking about someone that has already finished, clinical dentistry, right? BDS, that maybe wants to go into research.
Exactly.
Now, if that's the person, I think the idea would be that it depends on the kind of research, but I would say that you have to look for mentors. Mentor would help you so much, especially if you are planning to go out into a different country or a different system, because the system is different. So you need people that would guide you. You need people that will hold you through some of those, times that are not so clear or that are not so straight. And so that's why I would say look for people that have done what you are trying to do. Reach out to them and don't be afraid to ask questions. Ask questions, ask them, what exactly did you do? Because what I've realized is, and myself inclusive, there are certain things that I've done that I've refused to ask questions. I got to realize it later. And I'm asking myself, why didn't I just ask before? Because I just felt that, well, maybe it's not a big deal. There was no need to ask. But I think now, ask question if you are trying to go into something. Ask about, if I apply to these masters, are they going to be funding? Don't shy away from asking. Ask, are they going to be funding? If there's no funding, how did you guys do it? That kind of question. Be ready to ask those difficult questions because it's going to affect you. So ask before you get into it. And that's why I'm saying identify mentors, reach out to them. You have all the platforms now. I'm sure there are there are more platforms than LinkedIn that you can also use to reach out to people. So please use all those platforms to reach out to potential mentors so that you have an idea of what you are going into. And then be clear. Let them know if my idea is I just want to do the master so that I can go into clinical dentistry, I can do my MBD and start residency. Yes, be clear from the onset. Don't, because if you are not clear, then people don't know how to direct you, how to guide you. Because what I tell people is, if this is your aim, then maybe you don't need to do the PhD. Maybe what you need is just the masters, and then that would give you the set way to go into what they are going to. But if you are not straightforward, if you don't want to say the truth from the onset, then you probably will be guided in a different way. So that's my advice.
Thank you very much, sir, for that answer. Another question, sir. Can I directly go into PhD from finishing BDS? And if yes, how do I go about it?
Yes, you can. You can directly go because BDS is a professional degree. And so here is actually a graduate degree. So it means you can directly go into PhD. But it depends on which program you're applying to. So the program might have their own requirements. So for instance, like I said, I applied for a PhD, but the program reached out back to me saying that, well, we looked at your transcripts. There are some courses that are requirement for our own PhD that you have not taken. So, and they actually listed those courses for me. There were a lot of courses on, advanced epidemiology, something on, ANOVA, and there were a lot of start courses also that I've not taken those courses, and so they don't think I'm going to be able to cope with the PhD, and so they are going to offer me a master's. That was the offer. So again, it depends on the program and what you are. So maybe if you are trying to do dental science, for instance, yes, you can go into PhD because what you already have a lot of knowledge with regards to dentistry and all that. But because I was going into a course under public health, solely under public, it has nothing to do with dentistry, and so that's why some of those requirements prevented me from going straight. But the answer is yes, you can go straight into PhD. You just have to reach out to whichever program you're applying to say, hey, my name, so yeah, don't use A because that's not formal. So you can always say, hello, my name is so I'm currently doing this. I have, bachelor in dental surgery, and I'm interested in applying for a PhD program. That's so you can always reach out to the program director if you are not sure. But most times you should be able to apply for a PhD program, except in courses that are not related to your what you are doing. I mean, what you're currently doing, and so they might say that you don't have some of the requirements. But apart from that, yes, people do. A lot of people from BDS go straight to PhD in oral biology, PhD in dental science, or PhD in oral science, and all the likes. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. Another question: what opportunities are there for dental scientists to collaborate with other healthcare professionals? And how do you think interdisciplinary research can improve patient outcomes?
Yeah, and that's a great point. So there's a lot of opportunity for dental scientists to collaborate. I'm sure you guys are aware that a lot of dental conditions also have systemic, components. Like we talked about perio and cardiovascular condition. We talked about, perio and even renal condition. So there's a lot of linkage between oral condition and systemic condition. So yes, there is opportunity to collaborate, but again, you really have to, and that's something. Even the United States currently, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but there is a database that is called the All of Us database. So the All of Us database is currently the large database of, so they are tracking a lot of people. They have their they have their genetic data, they have a lot of data on them, biomarkers, blood pressure, all of those data. But then what they are trying to do now, which is what the center is working on, which I think by the time you guys are coming into the workforce, that should be ready. They're trying to link those individual data to their dental record. So we can start looking at the dental and systemic condition, because people are looking at caries and some other systemic condition. And so yes, there is opportunity to collaborate. But again, the problem is in most institutions, the dental record and the medical record are not together. And that's where the challenge is. So they tend to separate. So if you are in an institution where a lot of patients, you have both their dental and the medical record together, then it will be easy to do that kind of research.
All right, thank you very much, sir, for that precise answer. Another question, sir. Um, Please, sir, what do you need to do to be favorable for funding into grad school?
So the thing is with the United States, for PhD, you are likely going, I mean, most schools would fund PhD. So if you are going into a PhD program, except it's, I mean, the states otherwise, but most of the schools, PhD are usually funded. The problem is, so that means if you get, if you are go, if you get admitted into a PhD program, it comes with funding most times. The funding might now be in the form of, maybe you are going to be, a TA for a particular course, like a teaching assistant, or you're going to be a research assistant to a lab or a professor or something like that. But it usually comes with funding. The problem is usually with masters. Masters are not, guaranteed that they're going to have funding. So you could have, you might not have. So that's the option. But when you get a master's admission, which is what I tell people, then you now have to start reaching out. Exactly what I did. So you have to start reaching out to people to look for opportunity in their lab. And you don't have to limit yourself to that department that gave you that admission alone. You can reach out to other departments. So for instance, I got admitted into public health. I reached out and then I started saying, looking for, someone that would take me as a research assistant so that that my program will be funded. And then I realized that, well, I've been in contact with my mentor that is in College of Dentistry. So I reached out to him again and said, I'm going to be starting. Would I be able to get, a position, a research assistantship position with him? And yeah, he offered that. And he said, well, talk to your department. If your department is willing to allow you work in my lab, then that's fine. And that's exactly what I did. And so that's when I also knew that you can actually apply to be, and that has happened to several other Nigerian students back in Iowa. So people might be in public health, their assistantship might be in maybe biology undergrad. So because maybe they are medical doctors, so they can teach biology, for instance. So those are some of the ideas. So you have to understand that where would your skill fit? So if you're a medical doctor, you're a dentistry, for instance, maybe your skill can teach some courses not in that same college. So if you apply to TA to be a teaching assistant in that college, they might not take you because your transcript does not align with what you are going to say you want to teach. And so maybe look for other program or other department within the school that needs your expertise, and then you can be a TA in that place, and that does not hinder your course that you are doing in whichever grad college you have. And that's my advice.
Thank you very much, sir. Another question. Thank you very much, sir. It was concise and insightful. I would like to ask, let's say I've got an interview about submission of application. What should
Yeah.
I look at for doing the interview, please?
Yeah, so that's also a very good one. When you've gotten an interview, there are certain things that you really have to. So you have to, in a way, read about the program first. If you've not done that during your application, sometimes you also apply to so many schools at the same time. So you have to read about what the programs are likely going to be doing. Like what is the goal of that particular program? What are the type of research that faculties are doing? If you happen to know those are going to interview you ahead of time, look at their research profile. It's always online. So look at their research profile so that you have an idea of what they are into. And that again gives you an idea of how to answer them. The other thing is you also have to be diplomatic, for instance, and that's also talking from experience. Let's assume that my idea is I just want to go into the program, but I'm not really interested in research. I just want to use it to japa, like we say. And maybe once I get in, I want to go and do my I want to use that period of my master's to do my maybe MPD, for instance. You can't afford to say, so sometimes they ask you, so what's your plan afterwards? If I'm going to be funding you for research, for master's or for instance, then I want to see that you are really interested in, seeing that research through. I don't want you to be telling me that, immediately after, or what's your plan? Your plan is to go into clinical and go and do residency, because that means you're basically telling me that you're not going to use whatever funding that whatever funding that I've expanded on you during that period of your training. So again, you really have to understand that if somebody wants to fund you, then the person expects that at least you are going to be, you can say that I want to be a clinician scientist. That makes sense. That I want to be able to combine this and with my clinical experience. But saying that you are going to drop the old research and you expect the person to fund you, then the person might have doubts in saying, well, maybe she's not committed, he or she's not committed to whatever he or she's committed. And once they have that doubt, it's difficult to put funding on you. And that's something to bear in mind. But again, apart from that, just read about those that are going to interview you, look at their profile, and then that's a way to prepare. If you have students that in that school, reach out to them. Current PhDs, to reach out to them to say, I've gotten an interview. Do you have any advice for me or something like that?
Thank you very much, sir. Another question. Is oral biology a good way to start after BDS, and what are the opportunities that abound in it?
Yeah, so it depends on what you intend to do. If you are interested in basic science, oral biology, yes. Like if you are a basic science person, if you are interested in maybe pathology, yeah. So I would say oral biology, it's a good way to start. But if your interest is clinical research, sort of the community dentistry, for instance, maybe that's not a good way. Maybe you should look for something else that gives you, because you're not going to have those community engagements. And that's why, so I went into public health or the genetic epi. Again, it sort of works well for me because that also allows me, we're still doing outreaches actually back in Iowa because I was part of the committee, because that was part of the things that the College of Public Health would do. And so it depends on what exactly you're looking to do in the long run. Again, if you are the type that enjoys the basic science kind of thing, the pathology kind of thing, then maybe you might consider oral biology as an option. Because again, oral biologists too there's a lot of funding with cancer research and all that. So yes, that's an option. But if you're a type of person that enjoys human interactions or still wants to do research with community and all that, then maybe think of other, you know, things that gives you that because you don't want to get burnt out, because with some of this research, it's actually tiring at some point. And so that's what I would say. But either way, you can always go in with one and then realize that this doesn't work for me, and it's easier to actually switch when you're inside a program. Like it's easier to sort of start looking for other opportunity when you're inside a program, as opposed to looking for it when you're still outside or in Nigeria.
All right, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Another question here. What opportunities or initiatives are available to support early career dental scientists and foster the next generation of leaders in this field? And how can dental students acquire the needed research skills for a successful career and evidence-based practice?
Okay, so there are two in one. Now, the first one is, what are the opportunities that are available? I mean, you can always check. So if you go online and you check NIHOITE, for instance, the National Institute of Health, OIT, you would see. So they have options for people that are being, I mean, training for summer students that are dentists or something like. I mean that yeah, they're interested in dental research. The thing for some of them though is that you so there are certain requirements that might limit your application to some of them, but there are definitely programs that also takes international students for like maybe advanced training. If I mean those are the ones that are interested in going into clinical straightforward. Whereas there are also certain programs that allows you that when you're in your dental, I mean, still in dental school, you can actually reach out to people, I mean, some faculty member to go and spend summer in their lab and go back so that you can get to be exposed into research. And a lot of these programs are being funded because they are trying to improve diversity in research. Because we realize that whether you like it or not, there's still, disparity in the data that we have. We talked about AI nowadays, but it's basically garbage in, garbage out. So most of the data that are going in, for instance, are data from, Europeans. For instance, in orthodontics, most of those, standard that we use for SNA, SNP, and the likes, they are basically derived from other populations. So people are beginning to realize that we need inclusion. But because in the past, those society or those community don't technically trust researchers, especially if the researcher does not look like them. And so now they are trying to improve diversity so that you can have more people that look like the community to be able to go into those communities and get the data from them. And that's why, like I'm saying, that I mean, there is actually a movement to sort of increase diversity. And so, but what you need to do is look for a potential mentor, like I said, or look for someone that is doing a research that you're interested in. Mail that person and say, I'm currently I'm a clinical dental student, but I'll be interested in maybe visiting your lab for summer. Is there an opportunity for me to, reach out? Because some of them have diversity grants that they can use to actually get you into their lab for that summer period.
Thank you very much, sir. So I know you've been really asking our questions, sir. I think you should permit you to ask this one more question, sir. What is the job prospect like abroad after the masters and or the PhD degree, doctorate degree? What's the just job prospect like, sir?
I mean, it's the job prospect is okay. I'm going to talk from the point of view. The job prospect it depends, and that's what I would also say. Now, in terms of if you do PhD, master's, PhD, after PhD, you can decide to work in companies depending on what you have done. I mean, whatever you did your PhD on. But again, you can also decide to be a postdoc, and you would also get positions. I mean, you will get paid to some extent, but maybe not as much as you would have wanted if you're a clinician. And so that's where there is always something to do. That's what I would say. Once you're a PhD holder, for instance, or you have a graduate degree, there's always going to be something to do in quotes. But that something might not be something that's what you wanted to do, considering that you have spent a lot of time doing dentistry before you come into this. And that's where from the onset you have to have like a mentor that you discuss your plans with. So and I'm giving you some of these examples because again, if, for instance, I want to be a dentist scientist, I know that at some point I need this clinical exposure. And so I was already working towards it towards the end of my PhD, knowing that I need to come back to an environment that allows me to do some clinical. Because I've been away for 4 or 5 years from clinical. So I need to do something to demonstrate that I still have, the clinical skill before I get into the point of saying, okay, now I want to compete to be a clinician scientist in a school that has a dental clinic and that has, research lab for me to combine both. And so that's where that's what I'm saying, that it's important for you to identify some of those mentors. And you can have multiple. You can have mentor in terms of career. So someone that you are interested in the path, you can email them to say, you just want to get to learn how they have, what they have done, or how did they, taught this particular part, what advice do they have for you? And you keep up with some of those because they will be able to tell you from the onset that if this is your goal, then maybe don't take this route, or maybe start doing this during your PhD, start something like this. For instance, when I was doing my PhD, one of my other colleague that was there knew that I wanted to start residency in immediately after. And so he started shadowing. he started going to the clinic to shadow. So he reached out to one of the faculty who was part of his PhD mentor or PhD thesis member, and then he started shadowing with the person because the person was an orthodontics. And so by shadowing with that person, and then you now applying to be a resident, it was just a straightforward transition. And so those are some of the things you would learn by telling people this is, I mean, not telling your mentors, like those that have gone through those routes before you. But trust me, there is a lot of opportunity afterwards, that I can tell you, especially when you go into grad school. Some of those opportunities might not be what you would want to have, but again, there is always something at the end of it.
Well, thank you very much, sir. A question just popped in, sir. Please, sir, I would like to know the opportunities available if one would explore in doing DDS or residency program after the master's program.
Okay, if one wants to do BDS, right?
DDS after DDS
The
or residency
BDS.
master's program.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there is opportunity to do that. But I know someone, I think he finished from, but he was not from Lagos. He finished from Ibadan or something. So he did masters, something in public health, and then in fact he did some work after that, and then he went back to dental school to do DDS, and now he's doing surgery, oral surgery residency. So yes, there is. If you so it's all a matter of you have to wait because all of this is sacrifice because you have to for DDS you have to go back and spend 2 years again in dental school for you to get the DDS, and sometimes that also comes with acquiring or getting some loan to be able to fund that program, and so you have to weigh all the old option before you take that. Again, that's also a good process because when you are done, you know that okay, so what I'm going to be earning now is far, far better than what I would have been earning as a master's student alone. Because as a master's student alone, they probably might not pay you as a clinician. So that those are some of the differences that you have to factor in. But yes, you can do it after your once you finish your masters. If you take your IMBD and you apply to schools, you can actually even look for private practice or schools that you can shadow or you can volunteer, and that would show that you still have some US experience in terms of dental skills, and that should boost your chance of getting into any of the dental school that you want. Again, with a master's, you stand a higher chance because that shows that because everybody wants someone that has some research experience. That's what dentistry and even what's it called? So most dental program or even residency program, they want you to have some level of research so that you can also help to do research while you're doing your clinical dentistry.
Hmm. Thank you very much, Dr.
So that
Alade.
means, yeah, so that means if you can also get a publication while you're doing your master's, that would help. That's also another advice I would give you.
Talking about research, I think this is a personal question for me. Quite a number of dental students in ULADS because I'm opportunity to be the vice president. So quite a number of students are interested in research. Apart from year 5 research, we do a research, it's a compulsory research while in year 5, we do a research, and then after that, most students do not get to publish that research, and then I think that's like the end of the journey for research for them. So, but then quite a number of students are actually interested in research, and we don't know if you can create a small group, and then you probably be our mentor and direct us. I mean, because quite a number, we don't really have a lot of lecturers, and quite a number, the ones available are actually very busy, so they're occupied. So I don't know if you are willing to take up the mentor role to mentor a small group that are interested in research. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That's something I can do. I think it's not even me alone. I'm guessing that if you start it, I can, and then I can also tell you some other people you can reach out to that would be a good mentor for because maybe my own area of research is one. I know people that are doing geriatric, just public health solely. I know those that are doing just dental public health. So I can invite. You can have all of them that are also alumni that you can also invite to be part of that mentor team so that should in case someone has interest that's not totally genetics or nothing with what I have done, then the person can have a good mentor in that line. But just to speak to what you said, I think it's important that you guys should realize that the system that we run, and it's not just our system, it is everywhere. But I think the thing is the opportunity here is maybe more than back home. But you have to be the one to drive if you want to get that research to publication. And I'll give you an example. I know of someone that did a research. So when we used to do the research, we used to do it in groups. So you guys are even, I mean, I think it's better when you guys do individual. We used to do it in groups of maybe 5 or 6 people. And so when you are done in group, it's even difficult for you to coordinate the group to get to even complete the research to the point of not saying, I want to coordinate the group to write a publication. But someone was able to do it. And what he did was he wrote it himself. So he was practically the one that did the writing and doing it, but then he included all the names of the other members of the group and then went to the supervisor to say, well, I have this publication I intend to submit. And the supervisor read it and made some correction. And that was how he was able to get that publication out. And so sometimes you just have to, somebody has to sacrifice. It was difficult for us to even get a group together, talk less of now saying, you would say you go and write the results. Maybe that person will not do it at all, something like that, which is normal. And so my point is, another thing you can do though is think of submitting abstract from that work to go and present it somewhere. Sometimes even if it's not published, just that you have done abstract presentation, you've attended the conference. At that conference, that might be where you are going to meet your potential supervisor for your grad school. And so I think it's important for you to also think of submitting it somewhere to go and present, even if it's an online conference, submit. Just try and put yourself out there. And I think now it's even more global compared to when, the people that taught us were in school. So I think a lot of them don't even understand what is obtainable nowadays. So I think that you have that unique opportunity to put yourself out there better than they can do it. I'm not sure a lot of them are active on, LinkedIn or even social media, which you are. And I think that's where you need to now drive that relationship. You just need their permission to say, maybe I'm going for one conference. This is my abstract. Can you let me take a look at it? And then you just add their name as a senior author. I'm sure they will be happy to do that. So I think that's something to do. But again, going back to your point of creating a small working group, yes, that's fine. I'm happy to be part of that working group. And like I said, I can also tell you some other people that you can invite that also have, different research interests, but are also PhD qualified and they are dentists that should be able to help you along the line.
Thank you very much, Dr. Azeez. We really appreciate you taking out your time, coming here and sharing insights. This is a wealth of knowledge we all appreciate. And yeah, I think this is all draw the curtain. And I would like to invite the president, in person of Dr. Ms. Oluwaseyomi, to come and give us a closing remark. Thank you very much, Dr. Azeez.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Can we please show Dr. Azeez some love? Let's do the clap emoji, whatever emoji you want to do. So, Dr. Azeez, this is for you. Thank you very, 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 very much. We are indeed grateful. I'm sure so many people has gotten exposition on one or two things that they don't know about before now. So thank you very much, sir, for making this possible, even though we had to even shift it by 1 week and we were able to have it today. Thank you to everyone for joining in. Thanks to our friends from LinkedIn, our friends from other school that took out time to join in, and some of our reg also in Lutz here. So so we've come to the end of the whole webinar series thus far. So we are going to compile everything together, all the ones we have so far. We are going to compile all the slides together and share with as many as possible for every participant that have actually been that has actually been involved right from part 1 up to now part 5. So yes, so I think that's all. Thank you very much. Do have a wonderful evening and do have a great day ahead, Dr. Azeez.
It was nice being here. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, sir. Bye.